Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of October 24th through 30th. And wow, real busy week again, just like last week. And last week, very interesting week. I'm sure a lot of people saw it in their personal life that, talked about how the Sun and Venus were together all week, triggering a lot of relationship type energy that directly is affecting our lives. And they were getting hit by all kinds of different aspects from other planets all week, the same aspects over and over as they got into Scorpio on Sunday, actually yesterday. And really, relationships probably have gone now on our personal lives, to a deeper level, and whether it can work from there or it has to be like set back from is part of that process from last week. And this week we probably have even a more intense week. We have a new moon at 2 degrees Scorpio exactly. That is also a solar eclipse. So eclipse season is upon us. We have Mars stationing retrograde in Gemini right at the end of Gemini, and it's going to be retrograde until mid-January. And then Jupiter, which is retrograding back into the sign that it rules, Pisces. And then Mercury is going to repeat the very same pattern that the Sun and Venus did last week. So lots to talk about. And just real quickly here, for people who don't make it to the end and have asked me how to get in touch with me, the best way to get in touch with me is through my email, mattthue823@gmail.com. And that's, if you want to talk to me about a reading or anything else, that's really the best way to get me. So that's once more, mattthue823@gmail.com. And the Astrological Winds channel is a free service. It's on YouTube every week. If you have a YouTube account, become a follower, turn on your notifications. Since it is a free service, will you please, as a little payback to me, just pass the link on to somebody whenever you watch it? That would be great. I really appreciate that. It's also available on all kinds of podcasts. Just look up Astrological Winds channel. If you have an Instagram account, also available there. Look up Astrological Winds channel, become a follower. And I'll go into some more details on that contact stuff at the end. I don't want to waste too much time, but like I said, best way to get me, mattthue823@gmail.com. All right, so like I said, big 4 events this week. Very intense week last week for sure. We're in that relationship side of the zodiac, where relationships and how we learn about ourselves are very much the focus. We learn about ourselves so much through relationships, and so relationships are going through probably a lot of great change last week, and this week there's a lot of intense energy that has to do with all kinds of stuff that we'll see, manifest in the world, but also obviously affect all of us personally too. So the first thing is the new moon solar eclipse, and that is at exactly 2 degrees Scorpio, 2 degrees and 0 minutes. And that's on Tuesday. So, it's a new moon, and it's actually exactly conjunct Venus too, because remember, Venus and the Sun, like I said last week, walking down the aisle together right now. So both right at the beginning of Scorpio. And this is a solar eclipse because we are now in that Scorpio season where the South Node is. So it's brought one of the 2 eclipse seasons in. So that this new moon and the next full moon will both be eclipses. And we are in a solar eclipse when it's a new moon. And this one, this solar eclipse was born, actually, the initial solar eclipse that this comes from was born back on March 6th of 1049, and it's called it's the solar Saros Series South 6 is what it's called. And so when you look at the birth chart of that eclipse, there's a couple of very poignant energies that are in that eclipse that are embedded into this eclipse whenever it comes up every 18 years. So basically the one energy is Mars is opposite Pluto in that eclipse. And the other thing that's really interesting is the moon is conjunct Venus, just like it is in the new moon today, and the eclipse, or I mean on Tuesday, tomorrow, and then the eclipse tomorrow. There's an exact moon conjunct Venus when this eclipse was born back in 1049, and there's actually a moon conjunct Venus now too. But the one in 1049 was also on the midpoint of Uranus and the North Node. So these two energies, the Mars opposition to the Pluto and that, are both embedded in this eclipse. And what does that mean? It means that whenever this eclipse comes up every 18 years with the Mars-Pluto, there's stuff that's like power grabs, powerful, forceful energy comes up, and it's very oppositional. So it's the kind of energy that people that can bring violence, can bring war, can bring struggle, can bring coercion, can bring that kind of thing. It's very transformative. There's a lot of high energy and passion behind it, but it's also a very violent, turbulent energy. So when it's on an eclipse and it's playing across, social things, it can bring up, be a trigger for that kind of energy. And then also on the personal level, I think the moon Venus one here on the midpoint, the moon conjunct Venus on the midpoint of the Uranus North Node is the personal part of this eclipse. And I think that shows that there's sudden relationships, new relationships that could come into your life that are very changing and altering of where your direction is, and they can come in very quickly, and they may even lead very quickly too, and part of that may even be separation from old relationships too. But there's these sudden new relationships that come in that are very stimulating and exciting, and they can be sexual in nature. The Scorpio energy is very much like that, but they can also be a very deep romantic connection that can be transformative. Or even if they're non-romantic, these relationships can have a very deep effect on us and our psyche and the other person too, and be a very transformative experience for both people. So this is just embedded in this eclipse already. And then, we start talking about the eclipse itself. Now, eclipses are a turning point. And, your life may be going along in a certain direction for a long time. And if an eclipse hits your chart, it's like making a sudden left or right turn, and it's really never going back onto the direction that you went. Now, the thing is about eclipse, what I've noticed over the years is they're only about, maybe on an individual level, maybe about 25% of people get a strong effect from an eclipse like that, where it's literally a life-altering event, and it could be anywhere from even a month or two ago. You may have already had that event, that's already changed the complete direction of your life, and so it's not going to be everybody that feels it. And it's the same across, the world too, the mundane world. There'll be a lot of places that, where there can be life-changing events to those societies and those places in the world, but it won't be everywhere. And so one of the things to look for is your own chart. Where is 2 degrees Scorpio? Because that, if there is going to be a change, that's the house, the area of life where that change will occur. But more importantly, are there other planets that are at about 2 degrees, 1, 2, 3 degrees in your chart? that are going to get aspected by this eclipse, then you are more likely to see some life-changing event occur that literally will change the direction or course of your life. And it can be very, it can be such a quick change that initially it can be very disturbing, but it also is like just one of these places where your life is headed off to a new direction, and when the nodes are involved, it has a lot to do with our karma or dharma or our destiny, where we're supposed to be aligning with now. So that's really interesting. And as it is, like the moon in Scorpio, let's even think about just the new moon itself. And remember, a new moon is new beginnings, and it's conjunct Venus. So once again, that's backing up what the eclipse birth chart said. This is going to have a lot to do with relationships, and perhaps new relationships, that are really profound and deep in Scorpio. Like they may form very quickly, but they may have a very profound and deep kind of connection and energy between the people and for each individual that's transformative in nature and takes them down into areas of their own psyche and inside that they haven't been able to access before, and help them to break through certain areas. But, remember, Venus is very weak in Scorpio too, and so is the moon. Both of them are weak in Scorpio. So it's like the danger of Scorpio is like it's going to bring up these deep, passionate feelings, but it's very easy for most humans to turn that into 7 deadly sin territory, to get obsessed about someone or something or situation. Now, a lot of this may have to do with money too, in particular right now, because of the way the economy has been foundering and the world is in a very, seeing things like the supplies of things in very short, and driving prices up. So there's a lot of this can have to do with money also, but it brings up some really deep, intense energy that, if it'll trigger fears, it'll bring up stuff from our psyche that's subconscious. And if we're not aware of what that energy is, we can react in a very fearful way, which is trying to coerce and gain control and manipulate and use all these kinds of 7 deadly sins stuff to try to get what we want. So this is like dangerous territory. And the South Node is the node that's here with this Scorpio. So it's showing us we need to move away from that stuff. That's what we need to disentangle ourselves from. But this also shows there are people who may come into our lives right now that have a very deep effect on our mind and our psyche, and can help, that both can be helped in the relationship to be able to break through certain areas. But it's really, having a lot to do with your attitude about it too. And remember, new moon is new beginnings. So it's so relationships that begin now can have a very, very profound effect on each person's psyche. Now, this new moon is also ruled by Mars, which I already mentioned once is going to go retrograde this month. It's in Gemini. And it's also right now that Mars is trine Mercury, quincunx Pluto, sextile Eris, and square Neptune. So it's in a very, very edgy kind of area, that Mars right now. It's really, to me, there's this really is indicating some very dangerous times, and that, there's this restlessness. The moon quincunx Pluto brings this restlessness, this uneasiness of not knowing what to do in very stressful times that are obviously changing all around us. And then you square the Neptune at the same time. That means almost every action that we're taking is futile, and it's not bringing us the results we normally get. So it's very disheartening. It's discouraging on that level, and it can lead to, once again, wars over ideals things that, people setting like, not willing to back down and negotiate from what their ideals are. The good thing is the trine to Mercury and the sextile to Eris, because it is possibly stimulating a lot of new ideas about what to do, and it gives a lot of mental energy, and that we can focus and use maybe some opportunities to change things. But yeah, so this, like I said, look at your chart where 2 degrees Scorpio is, and take a look and see if you have any planets from 1 to 3 degrees, what that house is, and that's the area where you're going to feel it. But I think, this is very intense energy for the world too. There's a lot of like wild stuff going on in the world, and I'm getting a little bit more into that when I hit the Mars retrograde in a minute. So yeah, then on Thursday, Jupiter back into Pisces. Now I did talk a little bit about this in the monthly, and if you'll remember, Jupiter was in Pisces for only 5 months instead of the normal 12. It was like January through May, and it went back into Aries after it went retrograde in the spring. And like I said in the monthly, it's kind of a bummer, really, because, Jupiter is very happy in Pisces. It's one of the signs it rules. And we are going to get 2 more months now of Jupiter in Pisces, at least. So we're going to get 7 months anyway, not a full 12. And I think, one of the dangers of the Jupiter in Pisces, especially the way the world is now, is entrenching too much in our own value system and not be willing to break down. Pisces is one of those dualistic signs, and it is the sign of unification, but at the same time, the two fish are swimming away from each other. They don't understand that they're unified underneath. And so like Pisces is trying to remind us of that. But when we're blind to that, we can get once again into like a tug of war over what we value, what our morals are, what our philosophies are, what our religions are in the world. So this is a time, when it can really feed in a negative way, blow air or flame or fuel onto the fire of already like a lot of religious or value driven differences in the world, and how that affects society. So that's something we have to be very aware of. But on the positive sense, Jupiter in Pisces is this great, compassionate, understanding, tolerant of all others and their views and their philosophies and religions. And the reality is we're going into the age of Aquarius, which is also very much like that. And despite what we're seeing in the outer world, there is seemingly to be underneath a lot of things a great spiritual awakening happening too. And there's a lot of people that are ready for that change. And I think this Jupiter in Pisces, for people who are, more aware of their energies and more tolerant and compassionate and of others, and understanding and finding value for themselves and their own personal growth and evolution and consciousness in the viewpoints of others and other cultures and stuff. This will be a great time, where you can just really feel like your spiritual path is widening, broadening, bringing you in more, and allowing you to adjust your values and philosophies even more. So much personal growth and evolution can occur there. So that's the two sides of the coin with the Jupiter in Pisces, which will be in Pisces, I think about 2 months or so. It'll be in Pisces. Jupiter is going to go direct relatively soon. I think it's around Thanksgiving, if I remember right. And then, so by the end of the year, it'll be back into Aries, back into that more warlike type Jupiter energy. Okay, so the Mars retrograde, guys. Being an astrologer sometimes can be tough, because people act in a certain way most of the time, despite trying to learn and do things differently. For the most part, people follow what they've done in the past. And actually that makes prediction relatively easy at times. But so when Mars is retrograde, the ancients really felt it was a super sensitive time. Mars goes retrograde only about every 2.5 years. And if you guys all know about Mercury retrograde, what I call Mars retrograde is Mercury retrograde on steroids. Okay, so because Mars is all about our actions. It's like everything we do is Mars. It's motivation, drive. What makes us want to move, makes us want to do this blog, Mars, you know? And so when Mars goes retrograde, our actions just go off. They don't work the way they normally do. They don't bring us the results we normally want. And how frustrating can that be, especially when Mars goes retrograde 11 or 12 weeks. So it's like almost 3 months of Mars retrograde until mid-January. And so many of our actions that we normally do are not going to work out the way we normally have it. That's not only on a personal level, that's once again in society too. So the ancients, if you go out at night now and you have a clear sky, it's probably around 9 or 10 o'clock, definitely by 10, 11 for sure. If you look to the eastern horizon, you'll see a very bright orangey ball right now, and that's Mars. And the ancients, used to observe the planets before there was even a zodiac, before there were houses. They observed the planets and how they moved, and they observed how they aspected one another up in the sky. And they noticed that, over thousands of years of studying that Mars, whenever it turned retrograde and got this bright orange red, could be a very, very troublesome time for the society and the leaders of societies. And the reason it's tough for society is that many times that's when societies went to war. So we have a lot of that going on already right now. And, it seems like the thing that started in Ukraine with Russia is, just conflagrating more and more. And that's that Mars fire right now. When Mars goes retrograde, it's going to get so entrenched in that fiery defensive battle nature. And, I even read yesterday that the U.S. now has troops, supposedly aligning on the border of Ukraine. Every step being taken right now shows that this, is one of these situations that could conflagrate into a massive war. And then you look at places then we can look at individual places too. I'll just take Iran right now as for instance, just complete riots in the streets and chaos and protests because of this inner strife. So it's an internal war. United States, same thing, going on between the blue and red of what has been going on now for 15, 20 years at a minimum, or at least in a very open, blatant way. And for 15 or 20 years, just literally open warfare on one another. There's no getting along anymore, So all these things are examples of how are situations that will get conflagrated by Mars going retrograde. And then in Gemini, let's talk about that a little bit, because Mars rules the head. And that's why Mars can be very stubborn. It's headstrong, and it's in a sign, Gemini, that's all about the head, the mind, but dualistic, two different sides again, not willing to back down, stubborn about ideas, type of stuff that once again can conflagrate that energy, entrenching positions, oppositions, seeing the difference, focusing on the differences instead. And just getting very defensive about your beliefs, your ideas, your thoughts. And we can bring this down to our personal lives too. I'm not just talking about this in society. Think of the people that you have differences with right now that are based on ideas in the mind. During this 12-week period of Mars retrograde in Gemini, it's going to be a lot of battles of the mind, of your ideas and thoughts. And because it's Mercury, it's going to come out in words on an individual's level. But in the world, it can really end up spawning or fueling even more violence and war, So this is just and then the main point to remember in your personal life, it's going to be 12 weeks where patience is going to be really tested, because everything you try to do to try to figure out ways out of whatever situation that you're feeling restless, and Gemini is like feeding this, like, well, I have this idea, I have this idea, I have this idea, I have this idea, and none of them is working, but the mind is really like restless and jumpy and going around, and it wants to find some solution. And what we're going to find out is they're not going to work out right now. And so it's going to really be a test. This is one of the most sensitive moments, I'd say, these next few months over the last couple years, with, like, the Uranus Saturn square tearing everything apart. So, not to like try to scare people. I just want people to understand what we're up against, and the need to understand that if your stuff isn't working out normally, that is the energy for the next 12 weeks. And we just have to like try to make our ways through it in other ways, try to find other ideas, like that, trying that Mercury, that maybe we can connect and make certain opportunities and changes, sextile the Eris, the Mars, just that eventually will change things in the future. Now, quickly, it's getting late here on this blog. Mercury is repeating the same patterns the Sun and Venus did last week. And if you didn't listen to last week's blog, it might be good to go back and listen to it, really, because it's still pretty much in effect. But Mercury is going to quincunx Neptune, trine Mars, square Pluto, and get an opposition with Eris, a T-square, and quincunx Jupiter, and then go into Scorpio this week, just like the Sun and Venus did last week. So that energy is still very poignant too. And remember, I said it has a lot to do with relationships, So Tuesday is the quincunx to Neptune, unclear communications with others, lots of misunderstandings. Not, our mind is kind of a right-brained, it's impressionist, it's abstract, and it's hard to get our words out. There is a lot of spiritual, maybe, interests and ideas that, you can divert to, but it's really a good day actually to have some quiet time somewhere by yourself if possible. Wednesday's the trine to Mars, and that's the good one. It really can stimulate our mind to seek out the answers to problems, and I think this may be the best imprint we have on the Mars retrograde chart, is this trine to Mercury, and trying to use this time to look at the problems we have and come up with different solutions, and have this confidence that we can, put the energy out and do it. It does energize us and gives us a lot of ability. But like I said, we're probably not going to get any direct results until Mars goes direct mid-January or so. Then the T-square with Pluto, a square to Pluto, and an opposition to Eris. That is exact. It looks like Tuesday. Looks like it's Thursday. Yeah, it looks like it's Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday. But it'll be for a few days anyway, actually really all week. But that gives us an obsessed mind. We have to be very careful about getting narrow-minded and really obsessed with an idea or a situation or a person or whatever, and kind of blanking out everything else, and then trying to coerce other people into our point of view and causing a lot of chaos and distress when doing so. I mean, this is really a aspect where it's best to look at our own psyche, to dive deep within, and just kind of come to terms with that, and maybe talk to people about it in a more reasonable way, especially with other people who are doing the same thing, because then it can have great benefit and transformation and change for all parties involved. And then on Saturday, the quincunx to Jupiter. Mercury quincunx to Jupiter is a grand vision, but it's really sloppy with the details and wanting to carry it out. So there's a lot of hypocritical energy that can be wrapped up in that. It is positive and optimistic about things. So some of the ideas we came up with or some of the connections we made may give us a lot of optimism by next weekend. But at the same time, it can get really self-righteous and like not really be into like taking care of the details. And then Mercury slips into Scorpio right after that. And that is really, if anything else, it's the investigative mind. It's the mind that wants to resolve problems. It wants to get down deep. It's a scientist's mind, the old scientists, the cause and effect Newtonian scientists of really looking into things on very, very deep levels. But it also is like, it's really great energy to internalize in and look at our own psyche and see how it kind of drives us. But it can give a cynical, sarcastic point of view, which can be good for sense of humor. But most people stay quieter when Mercury is in Scorpio. They keep more to their chest. They keep more secrets. They don't express themselves as much. They keep it inside, and there may be certain other people that they'd be like that in front of because they just don't feel good about them, but they don't really want to get it into anything further than knowing that inside themselves. So like I said, a really dynamic week, guys. So like strap in. I know it's not the most hopeful thing. The world obviously is dragging us all along with many of these issues. I think a lot of them are going to be really exasperated through this week and the next 2-3 months. It's going to be a very delicate time through the U.S.'s midterm elections. That's going to be very intense time. The other eclipse is coming up right during that. All right, so next week I'll talk about the month of November and the weekly too. And this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. It's available on YouTube for free every week. If you are a YouTube person and you have an account, become a follower, turn on your notifications and you'll know when it's posted. Also available on all kinds of podcasts. Don't really need to see me. It's just a video of me these days that may graduate someday and it might be worthy, but really podcasts so much more easy to listen to because you can be doing something else and be in your car or whatever, So just look it up. It's put out by Buzzsprout. Whatever podcasts you like, just check them out. They should be on a number of different ones. Spotify, Apple iPodcasts, Reveal, etc. Just look it up. Also, if you have an Instagram account, look up Astrological Winds channel. I post the link there. Plus, I post extra material during the week sometimes, just some comments on certain days that are extra poignant. And I also have a Facebook account. I post the link on it. It's private. You have to friend me. Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten. My Venmo handle is the symbol same thing, Matthew with 2 T's, hyphen in the middle, and capital Lauten. If you'd like to give a donation for the blog, that would be wonderful. Any donation is acceptable. None is too small. Best thing you can do, though, do it as soon as you're done, please. Pass the link on to someone else you know who might be interested. I really appreciate your help in spreading the blog. If you're interested in beginners astrology classes, same thing. Just get in touch with me. If you're interested in a reading, that's the best way to support me. I do natal charts. I do predictive charts for the year so you can see what's coming up for you for the year. Relationship charts, relocation, astrocartography, election charts for the best timing of an event that you have planned. Horary charts if you're looking for the answer to some question you can't get the answer to. Children's charts, all kinds of stuff. I also do lectures, question and answer sessions, mini readings at events, all those things. Contact me at matthuE823@gmail.com. matthuE823@gmail.com. All right, I'll see y'all next week.